Hey guys! Alright, so we're going to do the reading for Conjure-Man Dies. I'm starting from the beginning, you want to scoot to where we were yesterday, okay? I'm starting from the beginning for anybody that wasn't here. Alright, here we go. Encountering bright lighted gaiety of Harlem's 7th Avenue. And remember, we're highlighting for our plot triangle, right? So the first part of the plot triangle is the exposition. That's where setting, characters, and the conflict is introduced. So you want to be highlighting in our color that we decided for exposition. And again, setting, character, and conflict. So be highlighting for those moments. Anything that has to do with those three. So Harlem's 7th Avenue should be something that you definitely have highlighted. The frigid midwinter night, there's something, seemed to relent a little. She had given Battery Park a chill stare, and she would undoubtedly freeze the Bronx. Another something to highlight it. But here in the mid-realm of rhythm and laughter, she seemed to grow warmer and friendlier, observing perhaps that those who dwelt here were mysteriously dark like herself. So we talked about how we're in Harlem, that's in New York. We're in the period of the Harlem Renaissance. That was a huge celebration of art, music, jazz, specifically for the African American culture. But we're in Harlem, specifically 7th Avenue, all the way to the Bronx, which is also a city in New York, so that whole stretch. And we have rhythm, music, laughter in the background. It's winter, but it feels warm outside because of those things. Of this favor, and remember, you're still highlighting for exposition, so any character, setting, and conflict detail. Of this favor, the avenue promptly took advantage. Sidewalks barren throughout the cold, white day, now sprouted life like fields in spring. Along swung boys, I have characters, and camel's hair beside girls, and bunny and muskrat. Broad, flat heels clacked, high, narrow ones clicked, reluctantly leaving the disgorging theaters or eagerly seeking the voracious dance halls. I have more setting. There was a loud jest and louder laughter and the frequent uplifting of merry voices in the moment's most popular song. So a song comes up, people are merry. What does merry mean? Okay. Then there's the song. I'm not going to sing it. I can't sing, but you can see it. Then we have, but all of Black Harlem was not thus gay and bright. Gay meaning happy here. So we have a section of Black Harlem. So Harlem, but a section of Black Harlem. Think about what that means. That was not gay, happy, and bright. So this we start to see is between the exposition to the conflict to rising action. Right now we have a problem. There's a section that is not happy and bright in Harlem. Any number of dark, chill, silent streets decline the relenting night's favor. 130th Street, for example, east of Lenox Avenue, was at this moment cold and still and narrowly forbidding. Think about what it means if something is forbidding. Should you go there? So that's probably something that we should highlight for rising action. So make sure you're in a different color for rising action. Once glanced down the block, was glad one's destination lay elsewhere. Its concentrated gloom was only intensified by an occasional spangle of electric light splashing ineffectually against the blackness, or by the unearthly pallor of the sky into which a wall of dwellings rose to hide the moon. Remember, we're highlighting now for rising action. We've moved from exposition to rising action. So any kind of drama around this conflict. And the conflict so far is this section of Harlem that's not so nice. Among the houses in this looming row, one reared a little taller and gaunter. Maybe that's something. Than its fellows, so that the others appeared to shrink from it and huddled together in the shadow on either side. The basement of this house was quite black, dark. Its first floor, high above the sidewalk and approached by long gray stone stoop, was only dimly lit. Its second floor was lighted and more dimly still, while the third, which was the top, was vacantly dark again, like the basement. About the house hovered an oppressive silence, as if those who entered here were warned beforehand not to speak above a whisper. So we have a very quiet house. There was like a footnote in one of those first 2-floor windows to the left of the entrance on a black and white sign reading, Samuel Crouch, Undertaker. On the narrow panel to the right of the doorway, the silver letters of another sign obscurely glittered on an onyx background. N. Frimbo, psychist. Remember what we said a fortune teller, I'm sorry, I just gave it away. Conjure-Man was a fortune teller, same thing as a psychist, okay? Able to read your future. Between the two signs were seated the high narrow vestibule, terminating in a pair of tall glass-painted windows. Glass curtains, tightly stretched in vertical folds, dimmed the steady, already too subdued illumination beyond. 2. It was about an hour before midnight that one of the doors rattled and flew open, revealing the bare-headed, short and round figure of a young man who was profoundly agitated and in a great hurry. Without closing the door behind him, he rushed down the stairs, sped across the street, and in a moment was frantically pushing the bell of a dwelling like a doorbell. Directly opposite, a tall, slender, light-skinned man of obviously habitual composure answered the exciting summons. So we have this guy, he runs across the street, he's hitting a doorbell, trying to get somebody to come down. Is you him? Stammered the agitated one, pointing to a shingle labeled John Darcher, MD. Yes, I'm Dr. Archer. Well, arch on over here, will you, Doc? Urged the caller. Something done happened to Frimbo. So maybe that's part of our rising action. Frimbo, the fortune teller? Step on it, will you, Doc? Shortly the physician, bag in hand, was hurrying up the graystone stoop behind his guide. They passed through the still open door into a hallway mounted on a flight of thickly carpeted stairs. At the head of the staircase, a tall, lank, angular figure waited for them. So we have a figure waiting for them. To this person, the short, round, black, and by now quite breathless guide panted. I got one, boy. Then here's the doc from across the street. Come on, Doc, right in here. Dr. Archer, in passing, had an impression of a young man as long and lean as himself, of similarly light complexion except for a profusion of dark brown freckles, and of curiously scowling countenance that glowed from either ill humor or apprehension. The doctor rounded the banister head and strode behind the pilot toward the front of the house along the upper hallway, midway of which, still following the excited short one, he turned and swung into the room that opened into the hall at that point. The tall fellow brought up the rear. Within the room, the physician stopped, looked about in surprise. So now the physician's in the room, looks around in surprise. The chamber was almost entirely in darkness. Think of what darkness could represent. Good, bad. The walls appeared to be hung from ceiling to floor with the black velvet drapes. Even the ceiling was covered, the heavy folds of cloth converging from four corners to gather at a central point above. A device which hung low over a chair behind a large desk-like table, yet these things, and indeed most of the room unlighted, so everything's dark. This was because instead of shredding its radiance downward and outward as would be in ordinary shaded drop light, the mechanism focused a horizontal beam upon a second chair on the opposite side of the table. Clearly, the person who used the chair beneath the odd spotlight would remain in a relative darkness, while the occupant of the other chair was brightly illuminated. So basically picture a dark room, and there's for two people sitting, but the only light is reaching the one person in the chair. So the other person sitting in a chair is in darkness. There he is, just like Jinx found him. And now, in the dark chair beneath this odd lamp, the doctor made out a huddled, shadowy form. Quickly, he stepped forward, so he's running to this form that's like huddled over. Is this the only light? Only one I've seen. Dr. Archer procured a flashlight from his bag and swept its faint beam over the walls and ceiling. Finding no sign of another lighting fixture, he directed that instrument in his hand towards the figure in the chair and saw a bare black head inclined limply sideways. A flaccid countenance with open mouth and fixed eyes staring from under drooping lids. So he finds this body's limp, the mouth is open, and the eyes are staring from like drooping lids. Okay, so let's think maybe about what happened to the body. Can't do much in here. Anybody up front? Yes, sir, 2 ladies. Have to get him outside. Let's see. I know, downstairs, down and crouch. There's a sofa. You men can take hold and get him down there. This way. So there's some movement in our story, so maybe some more rising action there. They're moving the body. There was hesitancy. Mean us, Doc? Of course, hurry. He doesn't look so hot now. I ain't none too warm myself, murmured in a short one, but he and his friends obeyed, carrying out their task with dispatch-born distaste. Down the stairs they followed Dr. Archer and into the undertaker's dimly lighted front room. So they're moving the body. Oh, Crouch, called the doctor. Mr. Crouch, that mister ought to get to him. But there was no answer. Guess he's out. That's right. Put him on the sofa. So they move the body now. Put him on the sofa. Push that other switch by the door. Good. Dr. Archer inspected the suspine figure as he reached into his bag. So now our doctor is investigating the figure, the body. Not so good, he commented. Beneath his black satin robe, the patient wore ordinary clothing, trousers, vest, shirt, collar, and tie. Normal, right? Deftly, the physician bared the chest. With one hand, he palpitated the heart area, while with the other, he adjusted the earpieces of his stethoscope. You know that thing that doctors wear, they put in their ears to hear your heart? Stethoscope. He bent over, placed the bell of his instrument on the motionless dark chest, and listened a long time, so trying to listen for a heartbeat. He removed the instrument, disconnected first one and then the other, the rubber tube and their junction, the bell, blew vigorously through them in turn, replaced them, and he repeated the operation of listening. At last he stood erect. Not a twitch, he said. Long gone, huh? Not so long, still warm, but gone. So now what has happened to our guy, right? What is he? And think about where this should go on our plot triangle. The short young man looked at his scowling, freckled companion. What'd I tell you? He whispered. Was I right or wasn't I? The tall one didn't answer but watched the doctor. The doctor put aside his stethoscope and inspected the patient's head more closely. The parted lips and half-opened eyes. He extended a hand and his extremely long fingers gently palpitated the scalp. Hello, he said. He turned the far side of the head towards him and looked first at that side, then at his fingers. What? Blood in his hair, announced the physician. Maybe that's something that we should have highlighted. He procured a gauze dressing from his bag, wiped his moist fingers, thoroughly sponged and re-inspected the wound. Abruptly, he turned to the two men, whom until now he had treated quite impersonally. Still imperturbably but incisively, the manner of lancing an abscess, he asked, Who are you two gentlemen? So now he starts questioning them. Maybe that's something we should have. Why, this is here Jinx Jenkins, Doc. He's my buddy, see? Him and me, and you, if I don't presume? Me? I'm Bubba Brown. Well, how did this happen, Mr. Brown? Deed, I don't know, Doc. What do you mean? Is somebody killed him? You don't know? Dr. Archer regarded the pair curiously a moment, then turned back to examine further. From an instrument case, he took a probe and proceeded to explore the wound in the dead man's scalp. Well, what do you know about it then? He asked, still probing. Who found him? Who found him? Jinx, answered the one who called himself Bubber. We just came up here to get him. Frimbo's advice about a little business project we thought up. So this is their reason for why they came into the house. Maybe that's something. Jinx went to see him. I waited in the waiting room. Presently, Jinx come busting up, pop-eyed, and beckoned to him. I went back with him, and there was Frimbo, just like you found him. We didn't even know he was over the river. Did he fall against anything and strike his head? So the doctor's like, what happened? No, sir, Doc. Jinx became articulate, so speaking very clearly. He didn't do nothing the whole time I was in there. Nothing but talk. He told me who I was and what I wanted before I could open my mouth. Well, I said that I knowed that much already and that I'd come to find out something I didn't know. Then he went on talking, because remember, he's a fortune teller. Then he went on talking, telling me plenty. He knowed his stuff all right, but all of a sudden he stopped talking and mumbled something about not being able to see, seemed like he got scared, and he say, Frimbo, why don't you see? So then the guy says, basically, dude, what's wrong with you? Then he didn't say no more. He sounded so funny, I got scared myself and jumped up and grabbed that light and turned it on, and there he was. So this guy goes in for his fortune. So he's talking to Frimbo, the fortune teller, and then all of a sudden Frimbo says he can't see, he's struggling, and then he just died. Do you believe him? Do you believe this Jinx guy? Is that what happened, or did something else happen? And think about whether there is a resolution or not. I don't know. All right, that's it, guys.